Happy Tuesday night, everybody. Welcome back to another session of Johnny Gaz Live. How are we feeling today, Lions fans? How are we feeling? My guess is you're feeling a lot better today than you did even last week at this time. But how about 2 weeks ago at this time? How are you feeling, Lions fans? What a great day to wake up a Detroit Lions fan after an amazing Monday Night Football game. I mean, there's so much to be said, and we're going to get into all of it today. We're going to do a full recap of that Detroit Lions traveling to Baltimore on Monday night to face a Super Bowl contending team in prime time, and the Lions come out in a shining light, winning the game 38-30 over the Baltimore Ravens. What a fantastic primetime showing for our favorite team. I mean, the NFL world is speaking nothing but glory on the Detroit Lions today. How does it feel, Lions fans? More than anything, welcome back to another session of Johnny Gaz Live. We go live Tuesday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Thank you guys for coming in early and often. Again, today we're going to be recapping the Monday night game, Detroit Lions, Baltimore Ravens. We're going to hit on all the key plays, all the key players. We're going to hit the highlights, the lowlights. We're going to talk about what this means for the Lions long term as we start to prep for the rest of the season. Obviously, we have week 4 and a matchup with the Cleveland Browns. But before we get there, let's enjoy what was a fantastic Monday night for the Detroit Lions. Make sure to share the stream with your friends. Let's get it out there so everyone can get involved, get in on the chat early and often. I will have plenty of questions for you guys in chat, but I'd love to know how you feel coming out of this Monday night victory. Let me know down in the chat. How was your Monday? How was your Tuesday? How does it feel now the Lions at 2-1 here early on in this season? So much to talk about. So much to get into. I'm very excited. And again, we're going to have a lot to go through, guys. So definitely let me know where you stand in the chat. Let's kick it off early. Before we dive in, was this the biggest win? Was this the biggest regular season win in the Dan Campbell era? I mean, is that how big this victory was for the Lions, going to Baltimore in prime time against a quality opponent? Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, everything they have to offer offensively, defensively. Both teams missing key pieces defensively, so we're not going to sit here and make any sort of excuses today. But is this the biggest victory as far as the regular season is concerned in the Dan Campbell era? Was it that big? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. Let's get into it. Trim, how you doing? Millicent, how you feeling? I appreciate you guys getting into the stream early. Mile Marker, he even had a comment in before we got started. I love it. How about that touchdown saving tackle by Jake Bates? Buddy, we're going to get into it all. We're going to hit everything, and I love that you're bringing it up early. I appreciate you getting involved in the chat early. Let's bring you on. Let's get everybody involved. Let's not wait. Let's show everybody our pride for the Detroit Lions. Man, what a game. The Bates tackle was absolutely the best. Loved it. Millicent, it was good. I mean, what a moment for him. He got his opportunity. 67-yard attempt, although he was left. I think the distance was good, but he missed it left, but made what was a touchdown-saving tackle, and the Lions ended up getting the stop there. Again, we're going to talk about that. But let's start at the top. You know, let's set the scene for this before we get too far into the details. Ravens, they're an AFC powerhouse. We know what Lamar Jackson brings to the table. Former MVP. Derrick Henry has been a rushing champion, over 2,000 yards in his history, and he is still a dominant force rushing the football. You add on top of that the Lions heading into Baltimore in a primetime game where Lamar Jackson has historically played really well. So already, and I'll say it for what it was, I picked against the Lions in this game. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I didn't. I believe my final score was a 28-24 pick in favor of the Ravens. And that was my view on the outside looking in before this game, obviously. And the Lions came out shining. And there were so many questions even after the Week 2 victory against Chicago at home, where they opened up everything offensively and things started to round into shape there. But I think there was just still so many questions. Was this Lions team the team we saw more in Week 1? Or were they more in line with what we saw in Week 2 against the Bears? So that was all out there. And I think without a reasonable doubt, they proved that they are a Super Bowl contending team, winning this football game 38-30. And they were really in control from start to finish. I mean, this was a back and forth scoring matchup, and it was a great primetime Monday Night Football game. Very fun to watch. But I felt the Lions really were in control from start to finish. And we'll talk about my reasons why. I knew you wouldn't forget, Millicent. Couldn't forget about my prediction. And I won't go away from it. I'm always realistic in my view of Lions games. And when I do previews, I really try to dissect it objectively as much as I am a true Lions fan. And I'm always going to be a little bit biased that way. I just thought that there was so much playing against the Lions here. The Ravens are historically good in prime time. You still had a lot of questions on the offensive line and the interior for the Lions. So there was so much to me that it felt like the Ravens were set up for success. And even if the Lions had lost that football game, I don't know that I'd feel that much differently about the team in general. But obviously the way they perform now allows us to look at this much differently. But I'm not going to run from my prediction. I did have the Lions losing this game. That was my pick, and it was wrong. And I'm so happy that I was wrong in so many ways. Muhammad played out of his mind, says Trim. I agree with you. Al-Qadim Muhammad was fantastic in this game. He's really been good all season long in his limited role. Now, he had to play a lot more, obviously, with the Marcus Davenport injury, and he shined in week 3, 2.5 sacks. And again, we'll talk about him in more detail, but I think he's a big piece to why they're not overly concerned about the Davenport absence. And he showed why. I appreciate you, Millicent. I do try to keep it real. Again, I'm a Lions fan at heart, so I'm never going to be upset when we have a performance like we saw against Baltimore. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the offense. Let's start right there. Let's focus on the offensive side of the football. I think the one thing that you have to be impressed with coming out of this game is the Lions' offensive line and rushing attack. That was one of the biggest questions coming into this early part of the season was, could the Lions recover from the Frank Ragnow departure, the departure of Kevin Zeitler? They had 2 young guards now filling in and shifting Graham Glasgow to center. And even after the Chicago game, you're still kind of left wondering, can they continue this rush attack? And will that pay dividends against a quality opponent? And it really carried the day against Baltimore. This rushing attack was fantastic. Just unbelievably fantastic. 224 total yards on the day. David Montgomery, 12 carries, 151 yards, the big 72-yard run, which was awesome. So much fun to watch. You could see him as he's running down the field. He sees the Jumbotron, so he's like, is he going to catch me? He's going to catch me. And it didn't really matter the fact that he got caught because the stamp of that play was what it was. But the running game was just so good. Jahmyr Gibbs, 22 carries, 67 yards. I mean, they were confident in that run game all night long. 2 touchdowns apiece for those guys. And ultimately, again, on the strength of the offensive line. But you can't say enough about the coaching staff, Hank Fraley, Dan Campbell, everything they've done to reset this group. And it paid ultimate dividends in week 3 and Monday night. And they were in control in the trenches all night long. And that running game is just, it's hard to stop when the offensive line is healthy and playing the way they did. Penei Sewell had another Hall of Fame building character type game. Tate Ratledge looks like a true mauler. Christian Mahogany continued his solid play. Graham Glasgow up and down at points, I would say, but ultimately when looking at the interior as far as how they're gelling the communication on the road in that environment, everything played out so well. And that really carried the day offensively for the Lions. So you have to leave extremely impressed with that side of things. What's up, Lauren? How you doing, buddy? Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys getting early in on the chat. Let's talk about this offense. With the running game as good as it was, it creates such a balanced attack for the Lions. The run game, the play action, all these trick fun plays that we have become accustomed to in the Ben Johnson offense. Well, they can continue that under John Morton. Now, there's been slight tweaks in the way that he utilizes those trick plays within the offense seems a little bit different than the way Ben Johnson did. A lot of his formations seem to be a little bit more compact and tighter. The way I heard it compared was more towards like the Rams offense. But obviously, it's extremely effective. So the explosiveness of this offense is there. But when they're running the football and can ground and pound like they did, it really is tough to stop. So then it creates a situation where Jared Goff doesn't have to be amazing. He was really good, but he didn't have to be great because the Lions' rushing attack was great. Jared Goff, 20 of 28, 202 yards, 1 TD. He wasn't sacked. And again, credit the offensive line. How about them Lions? But Jared Goff, calm, efficient, was mistake-free, didn't have a turnover. And that's the kind of thing you need to win those kind of games. Amon-Ra St. Brown, again, just in my opinion, the best overall wide receiver in the NFL. And you heard him talk about it last night, what he brings to the table. Leo, I agree with you, man. Don't forget about the sacks. Great place for Muhammad and Campbell. And at the very least, the Bates critical tackle. I agree. And a few people have hit on that already in the chat. That Bates tackle is huge because that return could have reset that ball game, and they ended up getting a stop there. So that was really big. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, let's go back to him because you can't forget about his importance to this offense, this organization in general. But he's there when you need it. 8 catches, 78 yards, had the touchdown, was clutch on 3rd and 4th down. And the big 4th down catch, fantastic throw by Jared Goff. Huge stones in the Lions organization, Dan Campbell, to make those kind of calls. But that's the way they do business, and they continued that. Jared Goff is a rock. And again, the confidence in the coaching staff to say, okay, Jared, go make a play on 4th down when they could have run the football. I think it was a 4th and 2. But they put it in Jared Goff's hands, and he goes to his bread and butter, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Clutch yet again. Lions also had 2 monster drives, clock-eating drives. Winning the time of possession is so key in these huge games. That's how you win on the road against quality opponents. And they had drives of 98 and 96 yards. One was an 18-play drive. That's incredible. Impressive. The NFL world was impressed by that. I don't know how you're not against a quality opponent. You know, that's how you win games. You win the turnover battle. You control time of possession. You win in the trenches, and you get timely plays. And Lions had all of that. But it's shined on their running game and the fact that they were able to sustain long drives, 98 yards, 96 yards. I think the Ravens in their history had only given up, 1 drive of 95 yards. They gave up 2 in one game to the Lions. That's incredible. Millicent says Ratledge had a hell of a game. That rookie is a beast. I agree. He is a mauler. And you put him next to Penei Sewell, and that's a scary combination. I mean, they showed it. Lauren says 11-minute drives suck all the energy from the defensive unit. Absolutely. I mean, that demoralizes their front 7 and keeps Lamar Jackson off the field. Maybe that's the most important thing against the Ravens, is it doesn't allow the offense and that rushing attack for the Ravens, which wasn't good, and we'll get to there, but it keeps them off the field. So it's so important, Lauren. So NFL.com had laid out sort of what the biggest plays of the game were. They had given 5 big plays, and one of the big plays was Lions are backed up at their own 2-yard line. And you saw that, and we'll talk about sort of the special teams. I think there were some lowlights, and a lot of that came in the special teams. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But big play number 1 was they're backed up in their own 2-yard line. Jared Goff ends up hitting Sam Laporta for 12 yards on a 3rd and 7. In that moment, it ends up sparking the 98-play drive. And it's so key. And I think we saw Jared Goff lean on Sam Laporta early in the season so far, and that continued in week 3 and in big spots when they had to have first downs. I mean, Sam Laporta was really big for them, and that was big play number 1 that they noted. Big play number 2, this is when they were tied 21-21 in the 4th. David Montgomery explodes for his 72-yard run at this point. That run showcased not just speed, but vision, and reminded everyone why he's so critical to this offense. And I think we got to spend some time on David Montgomery. I don't think any Lions fan had forgotten about him, but I think the Jahmyr Gibbs hype train really had taken off. And that, I think, put David Montgomery on the back burner in a lot of people's minds. And I think week 3, Monday Night Football against the Ravens, showcased that you cannot forget about David Montgomery and the importance that he is to this offense. In a lot of simple cases, he's the short yardage back. But obviously in a play like you saw in his 72-yard run, he's explosive. And he is so patient. His patience behind the line of scrimmage is really, really good. And that allows him to pick and choose the hole he runs through. And once he picks his hole, he can be gone. And so having that play from David Montgomery was huge. That was their second big play. Laporta, this is his year. I agree, Leo. I mean, his rookie year was truly second level. Not a lot of rookies, tight ends, come out and play the way he did. But then coming off the injury at the end of that year, I think he had a slow start to his last season. And now you're kind of seeing the full spectrum of Sam Laporta with him being healthy and has that rapport with Goff. It's really good. I agree, Lauren. That's when the momentum changed. Those long drives just carried the day, and it kills the Ravens in that sense. Jackson never looked comfortable out there, says Trim. I agree. And we're going to start talking about, let's get into that defense because I think it's a good segue. Lauren says, I think Gibbs can be effective between the tackles. He just needs to be a little more patient for his hole to open up. And I think that's kind of the next level in his game, Lauren. I think that's what you want to see from him now as we progress through the season. A little bit more patience. His speed is his asset. And I think in the opposite way, he very quickly wants to turn and run to the outside and try to beat people. And he certainly can with his game-changing speed. But you'd like to see him be a little bit more patient between the tackles and obviously now using the guards and the combination up front now that they're getting more confidence in what they can do there. I think we'll see that. But let's talk about the defense. And I think the thing defensively you got to focus on for the Lions in this matchup is the sacks. 7 sacks of Lamar Jackson on the day. That was the career high for Lamar Jackson. Muhammad, we said, Al-Qadim Muhammad, the star of the show, 2.5 sacks. He was really fantastic. Really good. And they had to have it. They have to have performances from the opposite end of Aiden Hutchinson because what I started to see and started to feel throughout this game was I wanted more out of Hutch early and often. Obviously, as the game wore on and the Lions started to break down the Baltimore trenches, they were able to get home, and that's when Hutch sort of took over at the end. Jack Campbell, we got to speak on him. I think it's really becoming his defense. Shifting away from Alex Anzalone now over to him. He's really in control. He made that huge play on the 4th down stop at the end of the half there. And I just think him now being in control in conjunction with Kelvin Shepard's defense and the Dan Campbell sort of culture, it's a perfect fit. It's all sort of coming together exactly how I think they planned. But the Lions pass rush, that was just so questions in the first 2 weeks of the season. And rightfully so. They couldn't get home to the quarterback. They couldn't produce sacks. And it looked bleak. But I think the thing that we could lean our hat on and what we focused on were the Lions' ability to contain the quarterback. And they did that so well against Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. And you have to. It looked like in some cases he was a step away from breaking free and making a big play. But there always seemed to be a line there with a shoestring tackle or coming from behind. I mean, they corralled him. They filled the gaps extremely well. They were so disciplined across their front 7. And it played so well against Baltimore. 7 sacks. Which leads to big play number 3, as noted here. Derek Barnes, a shoestring sack, stops Lamar on 3rd down and forces a field goal instead of a touchdown. And that was a huge tackle. And that's what I'm saying. There were moments where you thought, oh, boy, here he goes. But guys like Derek Barnes, Hutch, Muhammad, Tyleik Williams, DJ Reader, they were able to step up and contain this attack from Baltimore, which is not only Lamar Jackson, but it's also Derrick Henry. and they frustrated this Baltimore team. They frustrated Baltimore so much that Derrick Henry is throwing a fit on the sidelines. Fantastic moment to see. It's rare that you get a bruising all-time back throwing his helmet in a tantrum on the sideline, almost to the point where he fell off the bench. What a moment. But it speaks on the Lions front seven and everything they did to contain the rush attack for the Ravens. Only 85 yards on the ground. It's the lowest output they've had since Derrick Henry joined the Baltimore Ravens. So the Lions defense had it all working. Big play number 4. Hutchinson strips on Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter, seals the win. Ultimate redemption for last year's, the 2 years ago blowout loss in Baltimore. I mean, that was sort of the point where you knew the Lions were going to wrap it up. It was such a huge moment. Again, it was that thing that ultimately drove Derrick Henry and the Baltimore Ravens over the edge. It was so funny, Trim. I audibly laughed when I saw that. We had some fun on it today, watching it over and over again. Captain Jack with the split lip. Yeah, man, he took a shot, but played through it. Good for him. Millicent, I never would have predicted 7 sacks. Good night, Lauren. Appreciate you, man. Yeah, I never would have predicted that. That wasn't on my radar against Lamar Jackson. I wouldn't have assumed that the game would lean that direction. But again, it speaks on the game plan, what the Kelvin Shepherd defense can be. It was really good to see. I mean, he was bleeding out. Jack Campbell was sacrificing for the Lions. You love to see it. But I thought the Lions just controlled the tempo the whole game, even when they were down 21-14. And it was a tough moment for them that they had to battle through, but it just felt like they had control. And it starts with what they were doing offensive line and then on the defensive line. And it just built to the point where the Lions were really, from start to finish, felt like they had control of this football game. Now, the final score, 38-30, doesn't really show that. It's a great win, but the game felt like a much bigger spread than the ultimate final score ended up being. Big play number 5, late in the fourth, up 7. Campbell went for it on 4th and 2 at midfield. Goff lobs it to St. Brown for the conversion. Beautiful pass. We talked about that. And that slammed the door shut for the Lions. Great way to end it. That was big play number 5 as courtesy of ESPNNFL.com. What do you guys think? Question for you guys in chat. Which impressed you more? David Montgomery's 72-yard run, the 7 sacks on Lamar, or the gutsy 4th down call to St. Brown? So 3 choices. 72-yard run by Monty, the 7 sacks of Lamar Jackson, or the gutsy 4th down call to St. Brown. Which one was more impressive to you guys? Let me know in the chat. Trim says, Lions trenches pushed them Ravens around all game. They really did. Really did. Millicent says, I hadn't seen a tantrum like that since I taught 2nd grade. Yes. I have an 8-year-old. He doesn't throw tantrums anymore, but several years ago, he certainly did. So I'm familiar. That was such a scene. And it proved the Lions' dominance. Lauren says the Jake Bates tackle. Hey, that's okay. A lot of people seem to be impressed with that. It was a big moment. Hey, Dorothy, how you doing? She says, awesome game. Go Lions. How about Sonic and Knuckles? Man, you can't speak on the importance of the rushing attack for the Lions. Obviously, it was the shining star in this game. 224 on the ground. And they really stuck to it, too, because I felt like early on they forced Gibbs as much as possible, and it really wasn't paying dividends, but they stuck to it, and it paid off in so many ways. 2 touchdowns apiece for those guys. I think they said it's the 11th game that they've each had a touchdown. That's a franchise record. I mean, those things just continue to pile up. Yeah, and so in the chat we see Monty. Mile Marker's more impressed with Monty's 72-yard run. Millicent says the 7 sacks. Michelle, how you doing? She says 7 sacks, putting that kind of pressure on LJ shook his game up. They shook the whole Baltimore Ravens sideline up. The whole organization over there was shook up by this performance by the Lions. 7 sacks against the Ravens is pretty impressive. That's where I would go with this. I did not expect that. That was a surprise to me. Let's get into those key players, the X factors. And in my game previews, I always like to predict or try to get to who I think would be ultimately X factors in these games. Jahmyr Gibbs was one of mine. I should have went Monty because ultimately David Montgomery was the star. And he was huge in this matchup. And again, we talked about how he sort of reintroduced himself to the world in that primetime matchup. 151 yards, 2 TDs, power running. He's kind of that other identity to, like we talked about, Sonic and Knuckles. I mean, that duo is so formidable because they play off of each other so well. It frees up Gibbs to be his athletic self, the speed back, the scat back, and it's so much importance to this Lions offense. Jahmyr Gibbs, 2 TDs, and he's explosive. And I think we're kind of only tapping the surface of him so far this season. I mean, David Montgomery was the ultimate winner from week 3, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs always has a chance for explosive plays every time he touches the football. Talked about Jared Goff, just playing mistake-free, being the leader, being in control. And as he develops more with the John Morton offense, he'll become even more confident in the things he's able to do at, let's say, the line of scrimmage, to make audibles, to kill plays, to shift things around. I mean, I'm sure he's already doing that, but I feel like it just will get better and better. Is Honolulu flu a thing yet? I don't know. Well, I think it is, Lauren, because it seems like, and this was a history thing for the Lions, every time they play a team 2 years ago and the year previous, they would also lose the next game. So it's like the Lions have beat them up so much that they can't even prepare for the following week. So maybe that's the Honolulu flu. Millicent says, what makes the 7 sacks even more impressive is the fact that the Ravens had 0. I mean, that speaks on our offensive line, and that's just as important. Each member of the Lions deserves a game ball, Leo. I agree with you, man. Tesla was cheated because the throws sucked that he got. Yeah, I think we'll see him be integrated more into what they try to do offensively. They don't need to force balls to him. You know what I mean? Like, the offense dictates itself to a certain extent. So I'm not concerned about the couple attempts that he got, or 2 that they tried to get to him and didn't work out. But I think let the other pieces be what they are, and he will get his opportunities. Mal Marcus says, J-Mo did well when called upon. I agree. Solid catches. More trust with J-Mo. He only had the 2 catches, again, 43 yards. But again, when you had to have them. And JG is a surgeon with the football. He's one of the best passers in the league. When you give him time, I mean, he can pick apart any defense. Trim says Brock Wright and Waymo J-Mo made some amazing blocks. I agree with you. I think the double tight end looks the Lions like a lot because the tight ends are heavily involved in the blocking scheme. Brock Wright really isn't a threat offensively. And the fact that they've now lost Zylstra makes it even more important that he play well. I thought he was up and down, truthfully, Brock Wright. I did see him miss a block or 2. Waymo, I think that's why the Lions were comfortable in giving him the big contract, because he's so willing to block downfield and give back to his teammates. And that's different from other diva wide receivers in other organizations. So, yeah, he was huge. Mohammed's presence was a factor as well. I agree. Mohammed was huge. 2.5 sacks, big day for him. We talked about Sam Laporta's importance. Aiden Hutchinson, again, 9 pressures on the day, had the strip of Henry, had the sack. I think he kind of silenced some of the doubters as far as the Where's Hutch discussion. The pressure rate speaks for itself, and it creates a situation where the other Lions players then just have to be there. And that's how Muhammad ends up with 2.5 sacks. I mean, it's not only the Hutch effect, but that plays such a huge piece to this. The interior's playing really well. I think Tyleek and DJ Reader are doing a great job. Think about what this defensive line will look like when Aleem McNeil comes back. That's the scary part. They didn't have Aleem McNeil. They were without Levi Onwuzurike and some other pieces there. It's just incredible to think about that fact alone. Derek Barnes, again, not heavy in the stat sheet, but I think underrated as far as his importance in the linebacking crew. He made a good shoestring tackle we talked about. And he can really play all across the linebacker positions and on the defensive line. Now, he's not an interior lineman, but he can be used on the edge. And you kind of saw that as far as maintaining gaps, getting to Lamar Jackson. He was a big part of that. I think got a big shout out to the offensive line. I don't think you can speak enough about how important that was, that they gel and communication comes together. Ratledge, Glasgow, Mahogany, and then the 2 tackles. I mean, it's just, I would say unsung heroes, because the less you hear about them, typically the better they've played. And I just felt 224 yards against a really good defense in the Ravens that usually doesn't give up that kind of yardage on the ground was fantastic. So the offensive line to me was the star of this game. David Montgomery offensively, and then defensively, Al-Qadim Mohammed, Aiden Hutchinson. And then the coordinators, John Morton and Calvin Shepard. All the questions that surrounded them week 1. I mean, think back to the Monday after that loss in Green Bay. And I fell victim to it as well. We questioned what this Lions offense was. Can Calvin Shepard round this defense into form now that he has healthy pieces back? All of the questions we had really are answered. And now we're just rolling. Now the Lions are back in a position where they are looked at as Super Bowl contenders. They're at 2-1. And I think things are back in place. Let me know in the chat, who is your game MVP from Monday night? Who would you give the game ball to? Who was your game MVP? Detroit Lions versus Baltimore Ravens. Montgomery, Hutchinson, St. Brown, Muhammad. Let me know in those comments. Lions Talk live in the house. Woo! What up, Dan? I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for getting involved. Dan, I got to have you on this show, buddy. Let's try to figure something out so we can have a conversation about the next Lions victory. Again, live every Tuesday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Searching for @Johnny Gaz Sports on all your socials. Your socials will bring you to all of that fun Detroit Lions content. Appreciate you guys getting involved early and often. Again, we're talking Lions victory Monday night against the Baltimore Ravens, 38-30. The offensive line, the rushing attack, defensively, the front 7, everything they did, 7 sacks on Lamar Jackson. Let me know who was your MVP of the game in the chat. Mile Marker says Goff. We need a Chef Geach song this week. I don't know if I get that one, Lauren. Leo says, yep, I questioned them big time after the Green Bay game. I lost a little faith. I love your honesty, because I think a lot of Lions fans started to lose some faith, their level of faith. Remember, we had the live coming out of that game that Tuesday after, and it was levels of concern. And we have many different levels of concern with a lot of different areas of this Lions team. It'd be funny if we went back and did the same show, levels of concern. We would feel a lot better about things. Trim says Montgomery has to be the MVP of this game. I think you may be right, Trim. Monty was so good. And if it wasn't for the offensive line, like to me, if I could just give the award to the whole offensive line, I think I would, but that might be mine as well. Leo says, tough one. So many good players did great things. I say Montgomery offensively and Muhammad defensively. I don't think you're going to get an argument from any there. Lauren says the trenches. I agree. Millicent says, the fact we had so many premium players to talk about after the victory speaks volumes to what has been built here in Detroit. I agree. The Brad Holmes doubt from week 1 and even into week 2, I think, again, starts to fade away now when the Lions look the way they have the last couple weeks. And defensively, you get a guy like Muhammad who shines through, and all the questions were, well, you didn't do anything opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Where's the edge? No Zadarius Smith. We're going to play one of the guys next week that a lot of the Lions fan base said they should have gone and gotten. Say that 4 times. In Myles Garrett, which we'll talk about how we'll deal with him in a little bit. Michelle says MVP to Bates for throwing that tackle. There's been a lot of love to Jake Bates on that tackle. I love it. I agree. That was huge. The special teams was, it was up and down. You know, I don't like to nitpick in a Victory Tuesday, but I thought special teams left a little bit to be desired. You know, we had the penalty on the kickoff. I'm not ever going to blame Jake Bates for missing a 67-yarder. I hope he gets another opportunity at something like that because I think he had the distance. But their kick coverage wasn't great. The punt return game, I don't know what Khalif Raymond was doing on some of those returns. I'll be honest with you. I felt like he misplayed multiple punt returns, which backed the Lions up a few times. Again, we're nitpicking small things that ultimately led to the Lions' long drives. So you wouldn't have gotten that if Khalif Raymond didn't screw up the punt returns. But You'd rather start with a little better field position. Yeah, that tackle was great. People love the Bates tackle, man. We'll have to do a little feature on that maybe later in the week. Let's talk about the coaching, some of the strategy, some of the decision making in game. And we know the Dan Campbell aura and what his culture is. They're going to go for it on fourth down. If they're in plus territory in a situation where they got to have it, they're going for it, no doubt. And at the end of the game was just proof of the pudding, showing the faith in the team, the offense, and your quarterback more than anything. When they were running the ball so well all game long, it was a 4th and 2. They got to ice it. What do? They put the ball in Jared Goff's hands, and they go to their bread and butter with Amon-Ra St. Brown. A beautiful play again to seal it. But it's that sort of coaching and strategy that has created this Lions culture and this program. I heard it referred to today as a program. Dan Campbell isn't just coaching year to year, but he's developed a program. And what I mean by that is you then can replace both offensive coordinators in an offseason and things just keep rolling. Yeah, it's not just going to be perfect from the start. We saw week 1. They don't play the starters in preseason. A lot of that lends itself to that week 1 performance. But this program idea from Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions, they've now replaced both coordinators. And after week 3, we feel like the Lions are right back on track, right where they were last season when they finished 15 and 2. The offensive coordinator, John Morton, so many questions. Can he compare to Ben Johnson? Would the Lions offense take a step back? Would they lose their creativity, the explosiveness? It was all questioned after week 1. And then week 2, was it an aberration? Was this a fluke? Was this a flash in the pan against a bad Bears defense? But I think after now week 3, I think you can say very confidently this is a balanced attack. The explosiveness is there. They clearly have weapons that they can use at their disposal. And they were able to wear down the Ravens with this scheme, with their offensive line and everything they did with the rushing attack. They wore them down, used Gibbs and Monty perfectly. An 18-play drive, a 16-play drive. I mean, this offense is rolling. Leo says Raymond did have a good return. I didn't have a good return game. There you go. I agree with you. I don't think he was excellent. I think there's some room there to grow. And he's an all-pro. You expect a little more from that. Guys trying to make plays, especially on the road. And I'm sure he's given the green light from Dan Campbell. Look, take it a go. It's up to you what you want to do with it. I mean, that's what you earn as an all-pro. So I get how it happens, but it backed the Lions up. Millicent says, I have to give MVP to Goff for keeping it cool as a cucumber as he sustained those drives. He is. He's the ultimate calm quarterback, and especially when the interior is playing as well as it is. Monty's awesome. Not to mention not having Ragnow, Leo. I agree. I mean, that to me was the biggest question mark of this entire offseason. Once Ragnow retired, how do they fill that gap? And they did a good job so far. Millicent, I agree. He stays true to what his program is and what the culture is, and he doesn't stray from that, and he's not faking his love of the team, love of the players, and love of this organization. And it's projected out, and people have bought into it. Ben is a little Johnson. Well, he's not looking good right now, Trim. I think there's room to grow. I think they got an opportunity there in Chicago. They need to give him time. They can't rush this. That's been, I think, the problem with Chicago is they rush to the next quarterback, rush to the next head coach, and nothing sits and marinates long there. So let's see how long he lasts. Let's talk about Calvin Shepard, the defensive coordinator, as we kind of wrap up our discussion about week 3 and Monday Night Football. I thought Calvin Shepard's scheme was fantastic. Not just really good, fantastic. When you play Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens, Derrick Henry, everything they bring to the rushing attack, and we saw Lamar Jackson in his pinpoint passing. He's a great passer. I think the problem is, I don't know if it's a trust factor. I don't know if he's convinced himself that he doesn't want to use his legs if he doesn't have to. But ultimately, Calvin Shepard did exactly what they needed to do scheme-wise. Up front, their front 7 were great. We talked about the 7 sacks and maintaining your gap efficiency and your discipline, and they did everything so well. And I think that's Calvin Shepard's scheme. The way he has the linebackers playing with Jack Campbell, Anzalone, Derek Barnes, those guys are playing really, really good. They weren't beat over the middle of the field like they had been in previous matchups. I think the secondary, there's some spot things there you want to have cleaned up. Terry Arnold still with the penalty bug. I thought he was beat on a few occasions, but I also think they put him on an island a little bit. And the more he gets put in those situations, I think the better he'll be. So I'm not going to panic about that just yet, but we're going to keep our eyes on Terry Arnold and his play. But again, the coaching, the strategy, I thought it was just perfect against the Baltimore Ravens. And to come out 38-30 in this victory speaks on where the Lions are at with their program, their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. It all sort of came together. National media giving the Lions a ton of love on this Overreaction Tuesday. But ultimately put in great light now. The Lions back in the situation where they're looked at as Super Bowl contenders and things are on the up and up. So speaking of the weaknesses and what could have been cleaner, we talked about the punt return game. We talked about Khalif Raymond. I think they could be better there. I think their kick coverage could be better. You know, the secondary, they allowed 288 yards, 3 touchdowns to Lamar. And we talked about Terry and Arnold still kind of trying to get that pass interference bug off of him a little bit. So we're going to have to continue to see that growth if we're really getting nitpicky and talking about weaknesses. Brian Branch, I don't think he had his best game against Baltimore. That doesn't mean he didn't do the little things to help the Lions win, but I thought he had some missed opportunities at making some game-changing plays. There was a clear missed interception. I thought he was beat by the tight ends a couple times, but he's given a tough assignment there, and he's asked to do a lot. I still think you have depth concerns at defensive end. As great as El-Qadim Muhammad played, and as well as Aiden Hutchinson is rounding back into form, I think you still have questions as far as the depth. If you lose another piece across the defensive line, I think you're really back in a tough position. So I think that's still there. But again, we're nitpicking a lot of little things coming off of what was maybe the best regular season performance in this Dan Campbell era for the Lions. Let me know in the chat below if you could fix one thing, and I know there is not a lot to pinpoint here in this Victory Tuesday, but if there's one thing you could fix, secondary, special teams, penalties, Terry and Arnold, what would it be? Where do you want to see this team continue to improve or grow now coming off of this Week 3 victory? Hank Fraley is a genius, Michelle. Hank Fraley is very undercredited for now what this program has turned into. He's been with the Lions organization for several years. He had an opportunity to leave this offseason. He was offered, I believe, the offensive coordinator job for the Seattle Seahawks, and he turned it down, or at least wasn't ready to make that move or wanted to stick with the Lions. And I think that might be the biggest offseason move they made in general, is not losing Hank Fraley, because his coordination of the interior and all of this offensive line is what makes this offense hum. It's what rounded everything back into form. So his importance should not be understated. Leo says, I think we watched the best game the Lions have played. Well, let's hope it's not the last best game they've played all season long. Let's hope they look as good in Week 17 as they do in Week 3, because I think that's even more important. As important as this victory was for the Lions, and it means a lot right now, it will mean less at the end of the season if they can't continue this kind of play. But all indications are they're on the right path. Millicent says, I'll be at Ford Field for the Browns game. Looking forward to seeing our guys back home. Let's get into that. That's a great segue. Millicent, let's talk about the implications and sort of what's next for the Lions now after this Monday Night Football game. Mile Marker says, Ratledge look real good as a rookie, working hard. Great to watch his learning curve. He's really coming along well. I think the pass pro is what we're going to want to continue to see from him. I agree, Millicent. I think special teams has the most room for improvement. I'd ask if you could fix one area, what would it be? Even coming off of this victory, I think the secondary, special teams, there were penalties. What would you fix for the Lions? There isn't much. Jared Goff needs to practice throwing the ball, running, Rob. Well, I think we kind of get what we get from Jared Goff. Now, look, I thought his legs were fine yesterday. He actually did scramble out of trouble once or twice. Now, he's not going to run the football. He's never going to be an athletic presence, but that's not what we want out of Jared Goff. And if the offensive line continues to play the way that they did, then he doesn't need to use them legs. Leo says, yep, like the Tigers, first place all this time, and now they can't win anything. Well, that's unfortunate, Leo. Looks like the Tigers, I didn't get the final score. Did they end up losing that game? They were down and didn't look good. That's tough. I don't even want to get into the Tigers too much here at this stream just because it is depressing what's going on with them right now. Let's hope they can salvage a couple games here against Cleveland to make something of this division. That's unfortunate. But back at the line, Super Bowl victory on the horizon, Trim. Let's hope so. I hope you're correct. We're getting into the future. Oh, they lost. Yeah, I'm sorry, Leo. That's unfortunate. But, hey, they got 2 games left with Cleveland. Let's see if they can. I think they're tied now, right? So, hopefully good baseball ahead. We'll knock on wood. We'll keep praying for those Tigers. But getting back in the lines, what's next? The implications. They're now 2-1. A 38-30 victory on Monday night. And they are now in the eyes of the media and all the NFL world. The Lions are back. So what does this mean? I think it's a signature win. It's a statement, like we said. They're still built to dominate. The coordinator changeover, I don't think, is affecting them, and I think now they're back as the hunted. Ravens have a lot of questions. I think the Ravens are left wondering, what was that run defensive effort? Is there an issue with Derrick Henry? So there's some questions there. Going back to the Lions, the media perception. I looked up, and I always like to look into what are the power rankings coming off losses, victories, how do they shift back into gear? And coming off of this victory, Lions kind of back into the media darling area. ESPN, NFL.com, SI, The Ringer, MLive, all had them in the top 3, sort of convincing the NFL world that they're back now as Super Bowl contenders. And now we look ahead to week 4. The Lions, of course, will play the Cleveland Browns, who just came off of a shocking victory over the Green Bay Packers in week 3. So certainly the NFL and any given Sunday moniker holds true. I think the quote from Micah Parsons was that, I forget what it was, but he basically said they played like poo. They didn't have it. But that was not a good football game to watch, the Green Bay and Cleveland game. A lot of concerns on the defensive side for the Lions and facing Cleveland as far as Myles Garrett, and this offensive line is going to have to be stout. But ultimately, the Lions will come back home. They'll face a very beatable opponent in the Cleveland Browns. Sunday, September 28th. This is a 1 p.m. kickoff. Millicent's going to be at the game. Have fun with that, Millicent. Let's cheer us on to another victory. Hopefully, the Lions can go to 3-1. Again, a very winnable game. And it's kind of that in-between game because the following week, I believe they go on to face the Chiefs. Again, another winnable football game. But in going back to what this week 3 victory meant, I think a lot of people, when looking at the schedule ahead of this one, would have marked it as a loss. Obviously, I marked it as a loss because I had picked against the Lions, but they proved us all wrong. And again, are now at 2-1 as they head into this week 4 matchup against the Cleveland Browns. Let me know in the chat, guys. Now that Detroit is ranked in the top 3 in the media's eyes, they're favored by 8.5. Cleveland coming up in week 4 already. That's early in the week. Are they officially Super Bowl contenders in your eyes? Have they supplanted themselves as Super Bowl contenders? Are they the best team in the NFC? Question mark? Let me know in the comments. Trim says the Lions are back in everybody's crosshairs. Go Lions, says Rob. Lions need to stay with the basics. I agree. Offensive line play, rushing attack, play action, work the basics. Continue to be strong defensively up front. Those basics will win them the day, Rob. I agree. Millicent says, I love that MCDC does not succumb to the pesky questions about looking way ahead. He stands firm on just focusing on the next one. I think that's how he's been able to refocus the whole organization. Not looking at the negativity of the big picture, but looking at each day at a time, each practice at a time, each week on its own. and building the confidence within the organization from player to coach to front office. It all works together now. Browns blocked that kick. What a joke. Them guards were as low as they could go, just staring at the turf. That was such a shocking result. I watched the end of that game. Of course, I was rooting for the Browns because it puts the Lions in a better situation in the division. And I was shocked to see how badly the Green Bay offense was all day. But it sets up for a great Thanksgiving Day game down the road, and it will be a test for this Lions offensive line again. Leo says, yes, barring injuries, mile marker, Super Bowl contenders, best in the NFC. So that's the question. Are the Lions now true Super Bowl contenders? Are they the class of the NFC? Let me know in the comments. Leo Sawicki says, stay healthy. Yeah, they got to. I mean, that's easy to say, right, from the outside. Stay healthy. That's going to be the key. But we saw last year with how many injuries stacked up defensively, what that really means or can mean, even for the most talented of rosters. Trim says, absolutely the class of the NFC. Rob says, yes, sir, we're number one and always have been. I love it. I love the faith. Rob, ultimate Lions fan. I love it. But yeah, Myles Garrett, that front seven for the Browns will be a big test for this Lions offense. But again, I would certainly favor the Lions. Right now, Vegas has them as 8.5-point favorites. I'll have my full game preview coming up on Friday of this week. So be on the lookout for that through my YouTube channel at Johnny Gaz Sports. We'll have the Y series short coming out tomorrow morning, answering the question why the Lions were able to beat the Ravens on Monday Night Football. And again, a lot of it will focus on what our key factors were going into the game, and that was the offensive line play, protecting the football, those little things, and the Lions were able to do all of that to come out with this victory. It was a great week 3. It was a fantastic watch more than anything else. Monday Night Football, Lions traveling to Baltimore in a great atmosphere. Lions travel very well. Darcy, hit me up on DM. I don't know that I'll be available tomorrow morning last minute, unfortunately, but we can work something out in the future for sure. But it was just a great watch. And as nervous as I think a lot of Lions fans were, you saw if you watched the pregame show leading into Monday Night Football, all of the media members there picked against the Lions. So I think a lot of the confidence was in what Baltimore could do, and I think that was flipped on its head with how the Lions played, how the Lions controlled the trenches, controlled the line of scrimmage, the way their offenses now looked, the rushing attack. This was prime time Detroit Lions, and they've put themselves back in Super Bowl contendership. I appreciate that mile marker. The Y series is so much fun because it allows me to cover a lot of topics and focus in on those little things, key, concise things to why or why not the Lions won or lost a football game. The Detroit Lions are the only team that can stop themselves. I think there's a lot of that, Trim. I think everything will be dictated on what happens with the offensive line, because to me, everything stems there. If they're solid up front, the offense is good, and it's going to be tough for teams to even keep up. Thanks, Darcy. I appreciate you, Millicent, always being involved in the chat from start to finish. Thank you so much. And guys, everybody that's been involved in the chat today, thank you so much. Leo, Darcy, Trim, Mile Marker. I just appreciate you guys. It's so much fun talking Lions football. This stream, this live is starting to grow now each week. So tell your friends and family, share it with everybody. I'd love to get more and more people involved so we can just enjoy what is this season of Lions football. And coming off of Monday night, man, am I excited. I'm sure you guys are as well. What a great victory. But I appreciate you guys hanging out. Let's cut it off for this evening. Again, I'll have my Y Series short coming out tomorrow. We'll have additional shorts coming out all week long as we prep for week 4, as Cleveland comes into town to face the Lions. Lions now 2-1 coming off of this Monday Night Football victory, 38-30 over the Baltimore Ravens, a statement win for the Motor City Kitties. David Montgomery in this rushing attack was dominant up front offensively. On the offensive line, the defensive line in the trenches just controlled by the Lions from start to finish. Really positive, really nice to see. Leo, I appreciate you for being involved. Thank you. Trim says, happy Detroit could be the ones to put the blemish on Jackson's Monday Night Football record. And that was a scary thing. They had to be very disciplined, and they held true. And it's a huge statement win for these Lions. Definitely lifted my spirits this week. I agree with you, Leo. Anytime the Lions win, these Overreaction Tuesdays are just made so much more fun when we can talk Lions victory. But I'm going to leave it there, guys. I appreciate you. I hope everyone has a fantastic night. Make sure to go check out at Johnny Gaz Sports on any one of your socials for more concise and reliable Detroit Lions content. More than anything else, and I mean this, take care of yourself and your mental health. That is more important than anything. I want to make sure you guys come back and see me on future videos. Make sure to go out and do something good for somebody you don't know. Check out Dan at Lions Talk Live tomorrow morning at 7:30. Great resource for Lions content in the mornings. We'll have him on a future show. I come on his show every once in a while, so definitely check him out. Go check out the Villain at 313 Villain Squad, not only on YouTube, but on Facebook. He's given me such a great platform to have this live for you guys. He comes on the show all the time. We will have him back on future episodes, so definitely check him out. Again, I appreciate all your time. Have a fantastic night, guys. You take it easy. Peace and love. Go Lions.